Good morning, Prairie Alliance Church. It is so good to be with you in person and to see all of your beautiful faces. My name is Bonnie, and I am one of the campus pastors here at Prairie Alliance Church. Now, thank you, I was away for 12 weeks. And during those 12 weeks, it was an incredible gift to be able to jump online and to be with you. Even if I couldn't be in person, I could still join the services. And so this morning, I need to give a little shout out to all our volunteers who tirelessly come in and make that happen. So thank you to those of you running the cameras, right? These guys are amazing. Thank you also to our sound team. We've got sound men here in the room, but we also have people tucked away who are mixing everything for online. Then we've got our people upstairs who are running the slides and our producers. There are so many people that make the online experience what it is. So thank you so much. Now, speaking of online, I know that we have some people joining us. So I want to give a shout out to our campuses. We've got people in Dauphin, in Nipawin, and I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I kind of have favorites. We also have people in Dryden who are watching. So join me in welcoming them here. If you are online, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. So I've got you right here, kind of on my phone. Just say a quick hello and give us your best emoji for how you're feeling this morning. And for those of you in the room, I want you to turn to your neighbor and I want you to give them your best emoji impression. And if you don't know what an emoji is, simply look at your neighbor and go, "What's an emoji?" All right, so we've got a lot of great things happening here at the church, and I just want to highlight a few of them for you. Next week is our down week, and so we collect groceries on that week to be able to share with those who might need a little extra. So let's remember next week to be super generous, and let's just overflow those bins with groceries. The other thing to remember is our plan to protect. So I love the way our church is intentional with caring for people, and one of the ways we do that is through the plan to protect. If you are wanting to serve somewhere in the church, we ask that you come out on August 3rd for the Plan to Protect orientation. Those of you who have already done it but you need a refresher, that will take place on August 4th at 7 p.m. Young adults, all the young adults in the room, there is an event taking place at Julia and Paul Stanley's house on August 6th. Now, I've been trying to figure out if maybe I can get away with passing as a young adult, because that sounds like a lot of fun, right? I'm not sure that I can, but young adults, please mark that on your calendar. And then, Party Week. I hear Party Week picnics are back. How fantastic is that? So please remember that August 14th, bring your food, your chairs, your supplies, and be ready to go for that Party Week picnic. And now as we get ready to worship together, I'm going to ask you to stand with me, and we are going to say our side week prayer together. Jesus, thank you that I am a sheep in your large flock. Thank you for new eyes to see those I need to forgive, those who are lonely, those who need space, those ready to give up, those who need encouragement, and those who need to know they are welcome here. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for your love to care for these, my brothers and sisters. In your name, amen.
That the highest King will welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God.
sing this truth together. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Sing it again. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am.
And I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house is a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
And I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. And yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. And yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy and all my days. Oh yes, I will. As I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I
I love you, Lord. Know your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, and I will think of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest nights you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. Yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, surrendered now, I'll give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, surrendered now, I'll give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God.
So good to sing of the goodness of God and all of the gifts that He has given to us as a community. And now on this side week, we have an opportunity to share that with each other. So we are going to go into a time of connection. And earlier we sang, I am chosen, I am not forsaken. And I trust that this morning you know that you are chosen. You are not forsaken. And so we get to declare that over each other. So let's take a few moments to stand up and walk across the room, find someone that maybe you don't know, and introduce yourself to that person and speak those words over them. You are chosen. You are not forsaken. And we are so, so grateful that you're here. Let's do that together.
Good morning. My name is Tamara, and for those of you who haven't met me yet, I work with the kids here at Pack Portage. Wow, you guys were loud and really chatting with each other. That's great. Wonderful. So full disclosure here, in some areas of my life, I suffer sometimes with a scarcity mindset. You know what I mean by that, the thought process that there's not going to be enough. And in my life, I always think there's not going to be enough money. Now, while I've gotten healing in some places for that, there are some places where that scarcity mindset still rears its ugly head. But it was most prevalent when I was a little child. And it wasn't based in any reality, but I always thought my parents are going to run out of money. One day they're going to run out of money, and this good gig we have going on is not going to continue. And that wasn't the reality that I lived in at all, because my parents both had great jobs. They were leaders in their profession. We had a nice home. We had a pool. We got to do all these adventures, and we took family vacations. There was never a tax or debt collector coming to our door. And yet, I thought we were going to run out of money. And it showed up especially when we went on vacations. Because we used to always go for ski vacation in Alberta, and we'd stay at a hotel and ski and go out to restaurants. At those restaurants, I would calculate what each person was ordering. And I would think, okay, if they're ordering that, I really have to order something cheaper because I've got to save my parents from the poorhouse. And this would happen time and time again because my parents were, in my mind, apparently on the verge of bankruptcy. And so that continued for many years. And then when I was about 10, my grandpa died. And my mom thought it would be a great idea to bring my grandma along on these family vacations. And I love my grandma, but I didn't want to bring her on the family vacations because that was another mouth to calculate about how much I could actually order at restaurants. And it got kind of crazy because I became resentful that Grandma was on these trips with us. And it would come out in little, moody teenager kind of like, grouchiness towards my grandma. Who does that? The person who doesn't have an accurate view of their future is who does that. You see, I always thought that money was going to disappear. That was the future reality that formed how I lived in the present. And this is what we all do. We all have an idea of what the future holds for us, and we live out of that. Dallas Willard says that human beings think about their future as easily as we breathe, and it's our future that will dictate how we spend our time. Our thoughts about our future dictate how we spend our money. It dictates how we share our resources. It dictates who we talk to, how we treat them, what opportunities we dive into. Our thoughts about the future are so important. And it's so important that we get these right. I think it's especially important that we get our thoughts about the future in line with what God has to say about the future if we're going to dive into our 4 prayers fully. Especially if we're going to dive into the demographic prayer, which says that our churches need to look like our communities, need to be filled with the people who are represented in our communities. If we don't get our ideas about the future right, and if we have a scarcity mindset, that really, really affects how we can walk into our demographic prayer. So we need to know what God says about the future. And I'm going to take us into the book of Revelation. I know we've been in Revelation for months, and we are just taking a break up from it, but I'm bringing you back to it because chapters 21 and 22 in Revelation have the clearest version of what God says our future holds for us. And I think that we need to live in this and breathe in this so that we get our ideas about the future right. So, in Revelation 21, verse 3, God has just explained that he is going to bring about this redeemed heaven and earth, and he is going to create a new Jerusalem, which is a new city, and he describes what this new city looks like and who will be there. Listen to what he says. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among the mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them." So there's this community of God and peoples living together in harmony. And that word peoples is intentionally pluralized, not just in this translation, but in the earliest manuscripts, it's pluralized because it means not just one person, not just one nation, but many people, many nations, many peoples are going to be living with God. And then look what it says. It says, He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. So things that have plagued all of humanity, mourning, death, pain, tears, those won't be there anymore. There will be this beautiful relationship that all the nations, all the people have with God. Let's find out about what this new city, this future city, looks like with some other verses. Let's go to verse 22. It says, I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. So in this city, God's presence is going to be everywhere. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be thick. It's going to be lighting up the whole city. We don't need to have a sun or a moon anymore. And within that city, then it says, the nations will walk by its light. So the nations plural, will be there living in this relationship with God, led by what He tells them to do, following His ways, led by His light. And then it says, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Now, when John was hearing this vision from God, the kings of the earth would have meant the authorities on their culture, the authorities on their ethnicity will be there. They will fill this place. There will be diversity. It won't be a melting pot. It will be many nations, all nations represented there. And in this city, its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. So there won't be gates that are shut. There won't be you're included, you're excluded, you're shut out, we're building a wall. That won't be there. The gates will be opened and everyone will be welcomed. The only the only things that aren't welcome there are the characteristics that would ruin this beautiful relationship with God. And then this last verse, I love it because it says, people will bring into the city, they mean, the glory and the honor of the nations. Meaning every characteristic, every ounce of creativity that God has put in the various nations will be represented there. There will be diversity. We will celebrate people and their differences, and we will live in harmony. There will be different dances, different voices, different looks to people, different clothing, different food. Aren't you excited? Different will be celebrated. It will be enjoyed. This is the future that God says will be in this new city. And I read this, and my heart aches for this because I want this so badly. And yet, I look at our churches, and I'm like, I don't know if I've celebrated a multi-ethnic, multicultural thing as I've worshiped. And yet, here, God's clearly saying that His nation is a multi-ethnic nation. And I don't know that we always have different nationalities, different ethnicities represented around our tables or in our homes. And if I watch the news, I'm not sure that we're getting closer to unity when I see different nations arguing and the hurts and the pains that have been caused through different cultures not getting along. And so I ache for this, and I wonder, why is this not happening? And I think the answer comes maybe in what one of the elders from a First Nation community near Portage said to me when he was in my home. We were talking about reconciliation, and we were talking about his experience in the residential schools. And I said, if you could tell white people in Canada one thing, or you could tell Canadians one thing, what would you say? And I was expecting him to say, have compassion for the trauma we have endured, or know that our family unit was destroyed with residential schools, or know that people tried to intentionally destroy our identity and our culture. That's what I was expecting. But what he said shocked me, because he said, if I got the chance to talk to everyone in Canada, I would say, stop being so selfish. I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And other than like the incident with Grandma, I think that I'm maybe a pretty generous person. And so I said, could you explain that to me? And he said, well, you know, when the first settlers and the first explorers came to Canada and all the treaties came in, he said, it wasn't that the First Nations people weren't good warriors and couldn't defend the land. He said, it wasn't ours to give away. He said, we believe that the land belongs to everyone. And so we would use what we needed, and we would leave the land as we left it in the best condition possible for the next person. Stop being so selfish is what I'd say. And that was challenging to me. Because, see, when I think about the land, I tend to think about my lawn, my trees, my garden, my flowers, my vegetables, my driveway. I think of mine. I don't think of this as belonging to all. And while I try to leave the world better than I found it for the next person by recycling and all those things, there are times in my life when I'm just grabbing and the scarcity mindset has taken over. What can I get? What can I hold on to? And so I needed to think about this more. I needed to think about, where am I selfish, and how is that selfishness impacting me so I can't dive fully into our demographic prayer, so I can't live in the future that God has described in Revelation. And so I thought about the times when Nathan comes home and he opens our RSVP printout statement thingies, and he's like, look at how much we saved. And I'm like, we can't live on that. I am working till I'm 90 with that amount. Or if there's something that happens, like our car breaks down or something like that, and the first thing out of my mouth with RSPs or a car breakdown is, we've got to get rid of one of our World Vision children. We have these compassion kids that we take care of, that's okay, but let's get rid of the World Vision one. Me and my first world problems of a car breakdown, and I'm saying, let's stop helping out a World Vision kid. And there's more. I'm selfish when I shop. Because you know what I do? I go and I find a $10 t-shirt, and I'm like, woohoo, what a deal. And yet in my mind, I know that on the other side of the world, there is some person who's enslaved, who has made that shirt so that I can have the deal. It's sometimes an adult, but usually it's a child. But I got a deal. And I've bought into this societal idea that nothing matters more than my deal, my bank account, what I can grab and keep for myself. Scarcity runs deep. Selfishness runs deep in me. And so there's something that I'm not understanding, because I want so desperately for us to be this multi-ethnic nation, to be co-laborers with Christ who work about redeeming the earth and where we get to celebrate our diversity. But my selfishness is preventing me from living in this future that God describes. So I'm not getting something. And I think the thing that I am not getting occurs in a few verses before he describes how the nations will live with God. It's in verse 18. John is describing the vision he has seen of this new Jerusalem, and listen to what he says about it. The wall is built out of jasper, while the city is pure gold, clear as glass. The foundations of the wall of the city are adorned with every jewel. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th is jacinth, and the 12th is amethyst. And the 12 gates are 12 pearls. Each of the gates is a single pearl, and the streets of the city are pure gold, transparent as glass. There is an abundance, an opulent abundance in God's future. And we need to acknowledge that there is an abundance that He has. And it's not just for us, it's for every nation. It's for His multi-ethnic, multicultural nation to enjoy. It's not some people mine it and some people wear it. It's everyone gets to enjoy this abundance. You might be saying, yeah, but Tamara, that's talking about the future. I need the $10 shirt right now. So can you lead me to something that's going to give me encouragement for right now? Well, then I would take you to Matthew 6. Where Jesus says, don't worry about what food you are going to eat because I feed the sparrows. Don't worry about what you are going to wear because I clothe the lilies. Aren't you more important than the grass or the birds? I will take care of you. And I would take you to the areas in His Word where He says, when you are generous, test me in this and I will open up the heavens over you. You see, this idea about scarcity as our future or scarcity as now prevents us from stepping into our demographic prayer because we hurt people when we don't understand the future. We don't become blessings. We worry about what we have. And it doesn't shrink if we ignore our scarcity mindset. It grows. Let me give you an example of a person who it grew for. We were at a conference a few weeks ago, and there was a man who was on the stage, and he was telling us about his experiences in residential school. And I was like fully engaged listening to his story, and I heard like some chirping of ladies behind me, but I wasn't paying attention to them. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see Nathan go like this. And I know that because that is when he's really mad. It's like he's pushing out the anger so he doesn't explode. I'm like, oh gosh, what did they say? Please don't cause a scene or punch an old lady. That's what I'm thinking. And he's like, did you hear what they said? I'm like, no, but tell me later. And so later came. And he said that while our friend was talking about his experience in residential school, the old ladies behind us were saying, didn't we just give their children $3 billion? And it was in the attitude of how many times do we have to hear this? I'd say a few more. I'd say, how much is one life worth? One child's life worth? How much is the 215 children's lives worth? Or the over 1,000 children that we found in graves in Canada worth? 3 billion doesn't seem to cut it. And so we need to listen to this, because when we don't, and when we don't get into God's word about what the future holds, we become people with a scarcity mindset who roll our eyes when someone is describing the most painful moments of their life. And we worry about money as the bottom line. I'll give you another example. Do you know that some churches in Canada refuse to open their records on what happened in residential schools? They've sealed them for 50 years. There are some who have said, we will open it and we will let the healing start. But some who've said, no, they're staying sealed for 50 years, so the survivors never get the answers they need. The people who are hurting and wounded don't get to find out what happened to their relatives. And why? Because we're worried about how much this is going to cost us. And churches are withholding that information. Churches that are supposed to bring healing, churches that are supposed to be transparent, Churches that are supposed to bring blessing and God's love are saying, no, let's seal these. That's where scarcity takes us. We need to pay attention to what is reality, what God says is reality. But you know what, Pack? I am pretty proud of a lot of you because you have stepped into this and said no to a scarcity mindset. And you have said yes to the future that God says is going to happen. You have said yes to acknowledging the abundance around you. And so I would like to say thank you. Thank you to the farmers who are leading the way. This may seem like a weird one, but hear me out on this. The farmers who have had such tough years with weather patterns and stuff, and you could have sold your land to the highest bidder and paved paradise and put up a parking lot. But you have said no, and you have endured. And you have endured through some pretty tough stuff, and you are leaving land for generations. And you feed the nations, and you feed us, and we are indebted to you. And I would also like to say thank you to those people who choose to shop secondhand. Because when you shop secondhand, your money doesn't get into the hands of those businesses that would choose to enslave people on other sides of the world. And I would like to say thank you to Ashley and Josh Cordery, who've started Eagle's Wings. They've had to say no to all sorts of scarcity mindset, and they've volunteered and sacrificed time and money. And they've taught Indigenous kids how to fly a plane, but they've taught them so much more. If you've ever gone to one of their graduation ceremonies, you will see them pour into these kids. They acknowledge every child, and they acknowledge what is good about them and the gifts they've seen in them, and they honor the Indigenous culture. It is like a taste of heaven being at an Eagle's Wings graduation. Thank you for doing that. And I would like to say thank you also to the businesses in town that make room for immigrants, that pay immigrants the same wage as a Canadian, that don't take advantage of the fact that they are immigrants, have them work the same hours as a Canadian. That is not true of every business in Canada. So thank you, Packers, for doing that. And I would also like to say thank you to Mark and Yanira Peters, who time after time have had this potato giveaway in the fall. And there were years when that did not make sense economically. But they just said, we know who our God is, and we know what the abundance is that He has in His kingdom, and we will continue to give and feed our community so no one is in need. And I would like to say thank you to Paul Stanley, who he has every legal right in Canada to gouge the peoples of the North and take advantage of where they live and make them pay more for things. And he said, that is not just. And even though it's legal, it's not just, and I won't do it. And I will provide things for them in a way that is equal and on par with people in the South. Thank you for living that way. Thank you for getting rid of your scarcity mindset. Thank you for stepping into the future that God has unveiled for us here. And I would like to say thank you to the parents who teach their kids how to tithe, because they support our kids, our compassion kids in Guatemala and Mexico. The children are stepping into this multi-ethnic nation and this abundance when they do that. I would also like to say thank you to the parents who took the time out of their day to go pray over our plane. Every child who went to pray for that plane started thinking differently about their future. They started saying, when it's my turn to go up north, and record stories. When I get to be on this plane, they are dreaming, they are thinking in a whole different way, a way that reflects God's culture, a way that cares for this multi-ethnic nation. And I would like to also end by thanking the parents who took the time with their kids to do chores. We had a challenge last year that kids would do chores, and the money they earned from doing those chores would go towards purchasing the plane. This plane is going to different communities in the north to record songs and to preserve a culture that at one time churches tried to destroy. But our kids did chores, and they stepped into preserving a culture that will be present in the future. And so I want to end with a little letter that came to the church along with some money that went towards the plane. It says, "Dear Pastor Tamara, here is the money Declan and I earned for Pax Plane. We weeded and watered the garden. Declan moved the backyard, and I did our family's laundry. We also added the money from our tithe jar. I'm very excited to be part of this big thing. Declan and I hope someday we can go on the plane and help too. Love, Alethea." This kid's already thinking about a multi-ethnic nation. She's already knowing and experiencing the abundance. She worked her butt off for that money, and she gave it away freely and with a lovely little note. And when we step into this idea of the future, things shift inside of us. Scarcity goes away. And I want to encourage us to look at the areas in our life where there is scarcity and ask God to give us a picture of His future, give us a picture of His abundance, so that that doesn't have control. But what He says in His Word gives us an imagination to live out of and live for. Because when we do that, graves are turned to gardens, mornings turn to dancing. What is wrong in the world and goes against our demographic prayer is changed. I want to invite you to stand and sing this song with us.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. And you came along and put me back together. And
You may be sitting there and thinking, I have a scarcity mindset. I don't want to end up really stuck in this. Where do I start? Well, it starts with prayer. But also, the best thing to get rid of scarcity is simplicity. Giving away things, not allowing the things you own to control you. Simplicity also is something we use in our time management when we have a simple schedule rather than a busy schedule. We just make better decisions. You can take the $10 shirt and say, do I want to be about this? Or do I want to be about something else? So there's people here to pray with you. There's simplicity as something you can try. But let's finish with our side prayer. May we be filled to overflowing with the love of God, and as His true sons and daughters, be filled with His power to love, reconcile, and heal. May we bring together the things once torn apart and stand as family, side by side, united in His love. Amen. Have a wonderful Sunday.